having previously discussed Kiddush clubs, what can you actually experience in any of these different Kiddush clubs? That's something we're going to be discussing here on the 125th episode of the Jewish Drinking Show, bringing L'chaim to life. Welcome, everybody. I'm very excited. I am your host, Rabbi Drew Kaplan, and I'm very excited to welcome first-time guest of the show, Ehud Zinar, known better as Udi Zinar, and he is a relationship and personal coach, a spiritual mentor, and a public speaker. Born and raised in Israel, educated as a software engineer in the U.S., and he is also a presenter with more than 20 years in business development, which brings us to how Udi, well, first of all, welcome, Udi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So that brings us to our topic. As a traveling businessman, that presumably brings you many different places, which brings us to our topic of Kiddush clubs. Now, we've previously done, for listeners out there may know that we have done a Kiddush club episode before, an introduction, sort of giving people a sense of what it is. And then, Udi, you have, in your travels, you have experienced, you could basically give us a sort of an ethnographic, sort of a anthropological description of a variety of Kiddush clubs that you have experienced, you've been to. And so, I mean, especially for listeners who may not really have experienced either Kiddush club at all, but even some who may have experienced one or two, but, you know, hopefully you can provide us with a broader sense of what's out there when it comes to Kiddush clubs. So how did you, I don't know, I mean, what has been the range? Let me start off that way. What has been the range of experiences of your visiting various Kiddush clubs?
Actually, it's a good question. But before anything,
yes,
I was introduced to Kiddush clubs, actually, the first time. I'm trying to think about the first time I was introduced to the Kiddush club. I cannot remember the first one, but I mean, the first time, but it kind of came to me as a social thing. You know, people like socializing. In Kiddush club, I mean, obviously, a lot of shuls have a Kiddush after davening, but Kiddush club is a more intimate experience, you know, between like a few guys that are like into it. You have a l'chaim, you know, grab a bite, and then you know, they do that in the middle of the Haftarah. So basically, they're back in shul right afterwards. So
actually, speaking of introduced to Kiddush clubs, have this been something you would experience in Israel, or was only in your traveling abroad?
I've never seen it in Israel. Since the first time I have, you know, I was introduced to a Kiddush club in North America. Now they started doing stuff like this in Israel. I mean, obviously, a lot of Israelis travel. A lot of them were in shlichut, were in communities, and they kind of like the idea. So, and also there are a lot of North Americans who are living in Israel, and they kind of introduced the you know, that gathering social thing, social concept to Israelis. So before anything, it's a social thing. Now, as far as the range, well, I would say all the way to one end of the spectrum was a very quick l'chaim in the kitchen of the shul, or even like, you know, outside the back door, a small table with just a couple of crackers and some herring. And that's probably the most modest one I've been to. All the way to almost like a full-blown meal. Like, you know, I was in a Kiddush club where the members, like, there is a guy that raises money throughout the whole week.
Wow.
And they have like a room where they sit there, 25 guys with all kinds of varieties of good guys like Johnny and Walker and Jack and Daniel, and a lot of good guys sitting there like on the table, ready to be consumed and be part of the thing, including lots of different foods. Now, at a certain point, the rabbi in that shul thought it wasn't appropriate enough, so he banned warm food, like heated food, just, you know, just cold cuts and, you know, kind of
so warm foods crossed the line. That was too much.
Yeah, for the rabbi at a certain point. But you know, but the thing is, what I like the most about this Kiddush club, first, they come, I mean, all of them, and they sit down, they say Kiddush. They say Dvar Torah
Mm.
very sincerely.
Yeah.
And the guy that raises money throughout the week for the food,
Yeah.
the money that is gonna left over after buying all the food and the liquor, he gives it to the youth program in the shul.
Oh, that's a nice
So
model.
it also a good thing in a way of contributing to the youth program of the shul.
Yeah.
That's another side effect that is very positive.
Well, that's really lovely. I imagine having someone arrange throughout the week to collect funds is more of an anomaly. I imagine that's a minority amongst Kiddush clubs. I suspect most of them are more informal, like you mentioned. A few guys maybe gathering in a kitchen with cold cuts and some crackers and a scotch or a bourbon. That's probably more typical, right?
That's more typical, but I think that more and more those who like it and appreciate the social concept, they want to see it like they don't want to listen. You do it in the kitchen, right on the stainless steel top, over there, and with just a couple of time, it feels like we're doing it in hiding. And they say
Yes.
it's a positive social thing. Why don't we do it like a little more proper, at the table with a little bit more than just a bite or two. I mean, that's how they feel about it.
Yeah.
But I gotta tell you that the controversy against Kiddush Club basically has two arguments. And I would like to bring up the controversy against it. I mean, obviously,
Absolutely.
before we're gonna say. So the first thing is that they leave the show in the middle of the Haftarah, and it feels like not right getting out of the show. While my feeling is that those who do that are not likely to sit tight in the show in the middle of Haftarah anyways. I mean, no, I'm saying I'm not Melamed Zchut. I'm just trying to think about the personalities. And for certain people, the social gathering in the show is very important in their part of like being part of the show, being part of the community, Avodat Hashem. Something that they see. That's one argument that is against it. I don't think it's like positive to leave the shul in the middle of davening, but I don't think also they're doing it because of like negative reasons. So that's one thing. Second thing, in a lot of communities where I visited and spoke, the issue of the Kiddush Club was basically alcoholism, and people said, "Oh, it encourages people to drink." And I said like this: a person who is alcoholist, they would drink anyways. They don't need the Kiddush Club in order to drink, and more so, people who are addicted to alcohol tend to drink alone. I mean, they kind of hide. They know it's an addiction, so they hide it. They try to hide it. So if it comes to the Kiddush Club to grab just a little sip, that's not going to make a difference. And those who normally participate in Kiddush Clubs are not like that. I think that in that sense, Kiddush Club is controlled drinking because it's like the same guys. They know each other, and they know they're not going to cross the line. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so,
it's more controlled. People are watching out for each other, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are like instances where somebody does cross the line. Yes, probably, but I wouldn't blame the Kiddush Club for that. I would have blamed like maybe the guy. I would have blamed his drinking behavior. Maybe he has a drinking problem, but it's not like the Kiddush Club created that.
Hey there. I hope you're enjoying this episode so far, hearing a little bit more about Kiddush clubs and speaking about having a good time and perhaps even being silly. Here's a sneak peek into next week's episode.
The next Mishnah is a parody of the beginning of Brachot. Me'ematai matchilim lishtot bafurim beherev shemesh debeirav shakran v'rav yena amru mitzeta kokavim, right? So it's like the beginning of when do you recite the Shema?
I hope you enjoyed that sneak peek into next week's episode. Now back into this episode with Udi.
on the positive side. When I lived in America, that was many, many years ago, I think in Orthodox shuls, maybe 90%, 95% were Shomer Shabbos. People who were not Shomer Shabbos didn't show up in Orthodox shuls. And in the past 30, 40 years, there has been a transition in which Orthodox shuls realized that Torah belongs to everybody and davening belongs to everybody. And they opened up. And I visit a lot of shuls today where in some of them, maybe 70% not Shomer Shabbos, some of them, 40%. And if what brings that person to shul is that social concept, be it. And I've met many, many people who started that way in an Orthodox community, and slowly but surely they like the atmosphere, they like the social idea, and they put their kids in Orthodox schools, and they became part of the community.
Wow.
So I think the Judaism in our reality today, and understanding the reality of North America, knowing that on Saturday morning, people who are not part of the shul concept have a lot of options where to be, starting with the mall, ending with the beach. If we provide them some encouragement to show up at the shul, why not? I know a lot of Chabad places where I spoke, and all Shlichim told me the same exact thing, that most of the crowd started coming to shul because of the Kiddush, not the Kiddush club, the Kiddush afterwards, and the Fabregen, and they were sitting and eating a free meal, and the kids were playing, everybody was having a good time. Slowly but surely they became part of the community. And the Mishnah says, "Paga b'chayetz hara, moshcheu lebet hamidrash." You gotta lure them in. You gotta give them a point of attraction where they can feel part of the community. And I think in that sense, the Kiddush club does provide it to certain amount of people. Obviously, it's not replacing the main Kiddush afterwards, but if anybody watches, and I, in what I do and what I like, I observe people and I learn people, the behavior and, that kind of stuff. And I watch people at the Kiddush. It's a social gathering. It's not about the food. They all go home, then they lunch. There is food.
Yeah.
But it's about the social gathering. And that's important, creating some bonding, meeting other people. And I think that serves the community in a very positive way. There was one Kiddush club that I was part of when I visited that community, where they go to the Ashkama minyan, the early minyan. So instead of doing it like in the middle of davening, they do it quickly. They have to clear the room for the other minyan. So they go to one of the guy's house. So while his wife and his children go to the second minyan, six guys, sit. They have their own kiddush. They say a few words. They had some, some trolling, whatever it is. And so they formed their own kiddush club in a way. And I think it's great. It's a lot of fun.
Hey there, I hope you're enjoying the show. I want to break in. If you are enjoying this content, if you enjoy the show, if you enjoy other content I publish here with whether the Jewish Drinking Show or jewishdrinking.com, it's not just a website. It's not just the internet. I also exist in real life. I've spoken here in Southwest Ohio, as well as just the other month out of town in a couple different places, both Midwest, East Coast. I'm happy to actually bring Jewish drinking content to you, whether JCC, synagogue, Jewish organization. You don't even have to be a Jewish organization. You want to pay me? You want to have me bring insightful and lively content your way? Happy to do so. You can feel free to reach out to me at drew@jewishdrinking.com, and we can see how we can bring l'chaims to life. All right, now back into the show. Although I'm going to ask about the drinks in just a moment, we touched a little bit on the food. You mentioned earlier that incident where that shul had Kiddush club with warm foods, and the rabbi said, that's too much, just stick to cold cuts or whatever. What's the variety of food been at Kiddush clubs that you have seen?
First, before anything, herring. Gotta have herring and crackers. Either flatbread or crackers, that's for sure. I mean, I don't think I've ever been to a Kiddush club where they had no herring and crackers. I mean, that's that's the most essential. That's the most essential that I've seen
I think that would be min hamuvchar as a minimum. But I mean, look, the Kiddush club I typically go to, they'll have maybe some whitefish, some tuna fish, and or maybe some liver. So there's something to put on the crackers at least.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm saying like herring is like
Par excellence.
is the prominent member of the concept. Like that has to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, it goes so smoothly with scotch. So how could you not have herring?
Yeah.
But yeah,
this conversation is inspiring me to bring herring to my Kiddush club.
You know what? I live in Israel and I'm Yemenite. I go to Yemenite shul.
Yeah.
And after COVID, we started going back to shul, but still they had to put masks in the shul. Mm-hmm. So I didn't like the fact of putting on a mask. So I davened outside, on the porch.
Yeah.
And there were like 3 guys with me.
Mm-hmm.
And who didn't want to go in.
Mm-hmm.
And as davening went on, and I was telling them that those Yemenite people, they don't know the knee from their elbow. They're missing on the social idea of the shul. Mm-hmm. And I go to America very often, and I love it. Mm-hmm. So one of the guys telling me, "Oh, I come from Nebrak, and they have kiddushes all the time." And then another guy said, "Oh, he was in the embassy in Bulgaria, like on security, some job." Mm-hmm. And he said, "Oh yeah, I used to do that all the time." So I said, "Why don't you guys, why don't we like form such a thing?"
Yeah.
Sure enough, following morning we had some tuna fish salad and crackers and scotch, and now it became it's not a Kiddush club, but every Shabbos, in that Yamana shul we have a Kiddush, and sometimes with cholent, sometimes just cold cuts and crackers and herring, and they love it.
That's lovely.
And if people don't know, like Yemenite people and herring, just doesn't really go together. I mean, right. But I'm telling you, it doesn't go together. It flies. It's beautiful. It's great.
That's lovely. So, all right. So herring is a staple of Kiddush clubs, along with crackers as sort of a bare minimum. And you mentioned some having cholents. I imagine that's more of a rarity. I mean, what has been a variety of foods? Imagine again, it might just be simply you go from crackers and maybe herring or something to put on the crackers to maybe a multiple cholent sort of Kiddush club, right?
On Kiddush clubs, they try not to push it. Besides the one that I told you that they like, basically, it's like a meal. Mm-hmm. That one is, I would definitely put it at the very top. I told you that's all the way on the very top end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
They try not to overdo it because they do it in the middle of Tar, they have to go back to the show. Mm-hmm. If they do take cholent, if there is cholent for the Kiddush afterward, they might take a small bowl so they can munch on it just a little bit. Mm-hmm. But when it's a Kiddush club, I think they're all aware it's not the main thing. It's it's not the main thing. There's going to be Kiddush afterward.
Right.
So they really keep it for the social idea.
Interesting. I mean, it sounds like there's both first of all, what you were mentioning, there's going to be Kiddush anyways afterwards, a main Kiddush followed then by lunch. So people aren't really there for this. The food is not the focus. And it sounds also like if you get too big, it becomes a bit of an issue. And it certainly, it sounds like Kiddush club's part of the thing is not to become too big. Otherwise it draws attention, whether from the rabbi, congregants, and you want to have something modest, right? Something that's enough, but you still have Kiddush and lunch later. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. More so, it's also about the liquor.
Yes. Because, all right. So we're here for that. This is the Jewish drinking show. We have to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the guys at the Kiddush club, sometimes, they choose their own liquor. Mm-hmm. So let's say somebody sponsors a Kiddush afterwards. Mm-hmm. So they might, and there's always good scotch. I mean, I haven't seen like bad scotch, or bourbon or whatever. But at the Kiddush club, it will be like one level up normally. When one of them would bring like a good bottle, something, they like it. And it's like, that's our thing, you know.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that they hide the bottle, then it's gonna show up at the main Kiddush, but I'm saying it's like more of that's intimate. That's something
Hmm.
that we do just, you know, the few guys that do it.
Hmm.
I remember I
Nice.
was once at a community where I spoke, and then they told me, I thought the guy where, you know, hosted me, I said, "Where were you?" I said, "I went to Kiddush." Why didn't you tell me? He said, "You were a guest. You know, you were a guest. I mean, you got to leave the show, like, you know." I said, "Oh, you know what?" So I missed it. I don't know what they had over there, but I missed it.
And you keep mentioning Scotch. I suspect Scotch is sort of the predominant beverage featured at these Kiddush clubs, maybe sometimes bourbon. Have you seen also non-whiskey products, any tequilas, mezcals, beer, or is it pretty much typically whiskeys, sometimes maybe even wine?
It really is interesting.
Hmm.
Um, well, in the Northeast,
Hmm.
in the Northeast, it would be probably by far single malt whiskey.
Mm.
Um, Further south, um, I'm at a lot of places where they have bourbon,
Hmm.
as you know, the
Yeah.
Mid Atlantic,
Hmm.
Southeast. You know, sometimes in Florida, good bourbon, yes.
Mm.
But also single malt. The old fancy is obviously in Canada. It's a single malt whiskey.
Hmm.
They might be loyal to the Crown Royal, which is a Canadian blend, but it's a
Yeah.
good quality whiskey.
Hmm.
In some places, yeah, I've seen tequila. It's not though the main player. It
Hmm.
really, if somebody likes it, it brings a bottle. But
Hmm.
um, I think in North America, by far, it's single malt whiskey.
Hmm. Nice. I wanted to break in really briefly. I'm Rabbi Drew, your host and founder of JewishDrinking.com. Turns out, as of this fall, the IRS has recognized Jewish Drinking as a 501c3 organization. You are always welcome to make donations. If you have any questions how to do so, you can check out the website or even simply email me at drew@jewishdrinking.com. Thank you. Now back into the show.
I think that probably number one question
Mm-hmm.
that your listeners uh, probably might want to ask
Mm-hmm.
is if I visit a community and I like the concept,
Mm-hmm.
how do I make sure I'm invited to the Kiddush Club? Because those guys sneak out and they have their own like, you know, secret like bonding, and they know exactly when they're leaving.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, uh, I don't have an answer to it. That's like an
Mm.
enigma, because I mean, if
I
you
guess,
are a
I guess you have
guest,
to look for it. Right.
no, yeah, I mean, I think if you're into it, yeah, just watch the people. See who's getting
Mm-hmm.
up right in the middle, in the beginning of the Haftarah.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's rushing through the door and there's like a couple of guys rushing with him, it's a good chance they're going to the Kiddush Club. So in some places, um, they kind of keep it small and they don't invite other people.
Mm-hmm.
But at the most part, they're very warm and welcome. And I say, "Oh, can I join you?" Say, "Sure, no problem. It's cool. It's fun."
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, it's a good idea. Basically, it's also, I found it a very good place to start knowing people, because when you
Mm-hmm.
say, you know, can I join? Say, sure. What are you doing in town? I'm visiting. I'm this and that.
Mm-hmm.
And this way, you can start, you know, making friends with people.
Yeah.
While, you know, at the main Kiddush, where people are like schmoozing, there is a lot of kids and a lot of noise. And
Mm-hmm.
those people invited those to lunch, and they're, you know, picking up their lunch guests and this. There isn't much time really to get to know new members of the community or even like visitors. So
Mm-hmm.
Kiddush Club is a very kind of intimate, um, uh, you know, gathering in which you can meet people in the community and get to know people.
Udi, this has been fantastic. This has been insightful. Before we go, is there anything you would like to promote?
I think we should have the wisdom to look deep into the future,
Mm-hmm.
because I always say that me going to shul is no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
As how do I make sure the next generation comes to shul? The next generation finds it intriguing and interesting and warm and welcoming. If the shul doesn't have that atmosphere in the
Mm-hmm.
air, they're gonna feel it.
Mm.
Now, in some ways, for them to feel it if they see that we feel content, coming to shul.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably our maybe number one mission as parents, as community leaders, rabbis, presidents of shuls. And I got to tell you, in many, many places where I spoke, the idea of giving one basically warm welcome and a very Hamish atmosphere is an important tool that serves them in terms of growth and pursuit of happiness and other positive things in life. And I think we should understand that the shul is not just a place of davening. It's not just a place of worship. It doesn't matter if it's Orthodox, conservative, reform. I'm not familiar with their environment, but I'm saying generally, shul should be the kind of centerpiece. I mean, in our daily Jewish life. And we have to make sure that the kids, the younger generation sees it that way. And the more we embrace rituals, gatherings that are social and warm and welcoming, it's going to keep the younger generation, within the fold rather than, look outside for other excitements of any sorts. And there's lots of them outside. And we have to make sure that our excitement or our attraction is way more attracting than what they might find outside. That's the idea I would want to probably promote.
Wonderful. Thank you. That is very fantastic. Well, with that, Udi, thank you so much for everything. This has been great. And l'chaim.
L'chaim.